real people, real talk, and unreal news, this is Sunday Blues with Ren and Jerry.
So we had covered previously that the international trade deal CETA had died because of an opposition in Belgium's region of Wallonia. Was preventing Belgium from signing on, and that prevented the entire European Union from signing on. So it was kind of like, yay, victory.
Yeah, victory for once.
We celebrated, and they even canceled their signing ceremony and everything. And then a few days later, they kind of came to a midnight compromise that shocked activists. And of course, almost all of Europe is against this trade deal. So people were out in the streets. So they came to a compromise. And so Canada and the European Union have signed on to this, but all of the European Union member states must ratify this in their individual parliaments. So there's still a chance to kill this bitch, but it kind of rose back from the dead, I think.
Do you know what those compromises were?
Paul Magnet was the leader of Wallonia that came out, and he was being very strong against this. And one of the main things that they were worried about was the investor-state dispute system, which we talked about previously, would allow basically corporations to sue nations for lost profits.
Exactly.
If one of their regulations or laws got in the way of them making a profit. So that was really bad. And then he was also concerned, and there have been a lot of concerns about environmental, farming, health regulations that would be superseded by this agreement. And Europe is traditionally pretty strong on those. So I guess Wallonia is a socialist farming region of Belgium. So in one article that talks about this, it says Belgian politicians drop opposition to the UE-Canada trade deal. And it says one of the concessions he won, and that's Paul Magnet, the prime minister that refused to sign on originally. It says one of the concessions he won means that Belgium would be able to go to the European Court of Justice to determine whether a system of investor-state tribunals were compatible with EU law. The 4-page document contains a guarantee that the Belgian government will assess the socioeconomic and environmental impact of CETA.
So that's basically saying that Belgium can question the investor-state dispute section of the trade bill
in court. Yeah, so that is not set in stone. So basically, it's not dead, but it's not set in stone, and they have a chance to oppose it.
To me, I'm hearing this, and it's just specifically for Belgium, though. It doesn't sound to me like it's applying to the other countries. It sounds to me like it's just Belgium, and still all they're doing is just questioning it, not necessarily that it's not going to take place in Belgium.
Yeah, exactly. Well, he said, speaking of the delay, Magnet said he was sorry for our European partners and for the Canadians. Don't be, by the way. This is a huge decision. You don't have to be sorry for delaying. He said, but what we managed to get here was important, not just for Wallonians, but for all Europeans. So if they do challenge it in the EU court, it will, and they determine this is not legal and can't be a part of this trade deal, it won't be a part of the trade agreement for all of Europe.
So it'll set precedent?
Basically, they have a chance to challenge this in the European court. So yes, if the European Union, which is the governing body that signed on to this trade agreement, and their court says, no, this is not legal and we can't have this investor-state dispute system, then it'll be dead in that sense. I don't know if the trade agreement will still go forward, because that's kind of like the Canadians don't seem to be willing to compromise on that aspect.
Well, to me, it just sounds like that section of the trade agreement will be dead, not necessarily the trade agreement itself.
Yeah, exactly. So,
which is really good, but that's just
one small part of it.
And that's if the courts decide on the right side of things, which they don't always do.
Yeah, so I'm going to read another one from Common Dreams. It's called Canada and the EU Sign Thoroughly Undemocratic, quote unquote, Thoroughly Undemocratic CETA Trade Deal. And subtitle is Opposition Groups Note that the deal could still fail legal scrutiny and ratification in Europe. Okay, so it says Canada and the European Union signed the Comprehensive Economic and Trade Agreement, CETA, on Sunday amid widespread protests against the controversial deal that came back to life after negotiations stalled over objections from Wallonia, Belgium. Environmental and democracy groups who opposed the agreement issued cautious statements condemning the signing, but noting that CETA was not a done deal. This agreement will probably not survive the democratic and legal scrutiny of the ratification process over the coming month. It's months, it's time for our governments to break ranks with corporate lobbyists and redesign a trade policy that represents democracy and promotes the public interest, said Shira Stanton, the trade policy advisor at Greenpeace EU.
Basically, what I'm getting from that is that it's going to take several months for this to pass still.
Yeah, because all these separate member states have to ratify it individually. So, and you know, as we've previously stated, there's huge popular opposition to this in Europe. So people are still going to be in the street. When they announced that they had signed on to this deal, thousands of people across Europe went out into the streets and protested. So, I mean, it kind of just goes back to the issue of, you know, people... And there's an obvious, huge popular opposition to something, but governments still insist on, we need to do this because we know what's best for you guys.
Right, because like you said, the people are against it, but it's unanimous among all the countries, though. I mean, they are all agreeing to this, so it's not like the government's listening to the people.
No.
So while we're saying that Europe is against it, what we really mean are the people, not the governments.
And then, yeah, we did have Wallonia, but I don't know. See, that to me, the timing of that is very suspicious. When you finally succeed in your goal and you've killed something that you know the people of your region don't want, why do you go back in a midnight deal? You know, that makes me think, did someone come to him? Did someone give him money? Like,
well, what they're not talking about is, well, what are they gaining out of this? Why is this important to Wallonia where, you know, what that compromise that he got was good enough to sign on to this deal? I don't think it was good enough. I mean, I think it was something, but I mean, the deal still, the trade agreement's still going through. So what are they gaining out of it? I don't.
Well, yeah, it's really what is corporations gaining out of it. I mean, I think this lady that we quoted here in this article, you know, they're in rank with corporate lobbying, and that's really, you know, it's what our corporations gaining out of it, which is going to be a lot. Let me go ahead and read a little bit more of this article. It says, the deal has long been opposed on the grounds that it would harm human rights, democracy, and the climate, among other risks. Alfred de Zayas, the United Nations independent expert on the promotion of democratic and equitable international order, said in a statement on Saturday that each country should hold a referendum on signing the deal before doing so, warning that it was a corporate-driven, fundamentally flawed treaty. There is a quote, this is him, there's a legitimate fear that CETA will dilute environmental standards, food securities, and health and labor protection, he said. A treaty that strengthens the position of investors, transnational corporations, and monopolies at the expense of public interest conflicts with the duty of states to protect all people under their jurisdiction from internal and external threats.
Exactly. So what's Wallonia gaining out of this if all they got was to be able to take the investor-state dispute
to court, not even necessarily get it removed completely. All they're doing is the opportunity, which kind of shows you how unfair and undemocratic these agreements are in the first place, is that one of the member states signing on to it had to negotiate a special compromise just to get the opportunity to take it to court to determine its legality.
Yeah.
You know, that, I mean, these again, as the quote says very succinctly and well, transnational corporations are flexing their muscles here at the expense of the people and against. It's the same thing with TPP and Dakota Access Pipeline and all the things here that we're fighting against. And it's like, there's a huge outcry. Thousands of people don't want it, but you know, your voice doesn't matter, apparently.
And this is another clear example of how governments work for corporate America because they're so intertwined with them, with all the money that they receive from them, and they no longer represent the people. I mean, we're kind of still in the mix of that, where on the surface they try to look and appear as though they represent the people.
Because we're supposed to be Western democracies. Right.
But in the actions, they represent corporate America. And it's really saddening to see the state of things. And I think a lot of the world, or at least here in the U.S., though maybe the rest of the world was already more aware than we are, but I think we're really starting to wake up to that, the general populace, because it's just becoming more apparent as the years are going on.
Yeah, and I think, in regards to the TPP, which is our Trans-Pacific Partnership that we're trying to pass with Asian nations, I think there's a lot of popular opposition to it over there as well, because they know the same repercussions and consequences, where American corporations are just going to have huge power over there. Obviously, here at home, it's going to drive down our wages and take jobs away, just like with NAFTA. But, yeah, I agree with you 100%. Nations across the world, on all continents, we're all kind of waking up at the same time to this corporate power is bullshit. Because it's already happening in some places. What was it, Ecuador or some South American nation was getting sued? I believe you mentioned this on a previous...
by a tobacco company. Because they were... I believe they were putting labels on the cigarettes, or banning cigarettes, actually. I think that's what it was. They were banning it. The tobacco company came back and sued them and forced them to sell cigarettes there. Yeah,
and that also happened in Australia, because they were trying to do like very graphic images on the cigarette boxes, like, diseased lungs and all this shit. And the tobacco company sued the Australians through an investor-state dispute system for lost profits, because they're saying your law is impeding our sale of cigarettes and we have a right to this profit. It's just horrible.
So this is what I don't understand. I don't understand the corporations. They usually donate money to politicians. Therefore, the politicians are stuck with these corporations and doing their bidding. But this investor-state dispute is basically giving away the country's sovereignty in a way, to be able to say, yes, we can do this, no, we can't do this. And that's just a lot of power that they're basically giving to corporations. Yeah, to already powerful, hugely rich entities. It's just giving them more. It's kind of like how I love that phrase, the right to work. It's like, oh yeah, of course I have the right to work. And it's like the right to work and the right to make profit. Those are our two biggest values in terms of like foreign policy and all these international trade agreements that are coming. Because, as you say, once the corporations get so embedded in our government and they have that control, then they're actually the ones lobbying and writing these agreements and pushing so hard for them. So in regards to going back to CETA and Wallonia, it's pretty disappointing that Wallonia caved. I think they caved, honestly. I mean, it's good that they get to challenge it in court, but... It's just very disheartening that it's like, you won, it was over, and then they came back. So you have to wonder, like you say, what are they getting out of it? Who was paid off to make this happen? Because they said that this trade deal was like 8 years in the making, and of course people were very invested in it getting passed. And yeah, there's not a convincing argument for why they changed their mind to sign on to it. They're not really gaining anything. No. I see that's really substantial. So that's really disappointing. So yeah, if you're over there in Europe, keep the fight going. Your local parliament has to vote on this. So, and I have no doubt Europe's pretty good about getting out there in the streets when they don't want something to pass. So, anyways, alrighty, well, we're gonna wrap this one up. Thanks, guys. All right, thanks. Our website is sundaybluespodcast.com. Our Twitter handle is @sundaybluespod, and we are available on Stitcher, SoundCloud, and now YouTube. So subscribe to our channel. Give us comments. Love you guys.